Understanding intersectionality is crucial for taking down oppression. Therefore, acknowledging the differences in marginalized groups brings awareness about the differences that not only exist between myself and others, but also between groups across the world in order to fuel social change. Holding the status of being a white, affluent male that resides within the middle class has given me certain privileges and opportunities that many other, specifically marginalized and/or minority groups, are simply deprived of due to their race and socioeconomic standing. Although I am thankful for all the privileges and opportunities I have been given, it is only commonly misinterpreted that individuals like myself do not experience hardships. However, growing up, I have faced many challenges that have influenced my mental health that may appear less severe when compared to other groups of individuals, but have still made me feel powerless and weak. Thus, intersectionality is, in a sense, a lens through which not only I, but also others can learn to identify and understand overlaps between the complexities of human experience. My maternal grandmother, a white woman, experienced more than a few abusive relationships throughout her lifetime. Although her race may pose as an easy out from her abusive relationships, that did not dissipate the severity and fear was overcoming by those harsh times. Considering my grandmother did grow up surrounded by a background of wealth, I was surprised to realize that she didn't use wealth to seek help. Rather, she was more fearful of the potential consequences that could arise if she were to reach out for assistance. This made me aware that although wealth has many pros, it is a common misconception that money can solve all problems. However, as seen in this scenario, that was not the case. Kimberly Crenshaw argues that white females who seek help are not only getting less attention but are also looked at as harmful towards aiding the large number of cases in neighborhoods of minorities. Specifically, she states, within communities of color, efforts to stem the politicization of domestic violence are often grounded in intents to maintain integrity of the community. The articulation of the perspective takes different forms. Some critics allege that feminism has no place within communities of color, that issues are internally divisive, and that they represent the migration of white women's concerns into contexts in which they are not only irrelevant but also harmful. At its most extreme, the rhetoric denies that gender violence is a problem in the community and characterizes any effort to politicize gender subordination as itself a community problem. In other terms, Crenshaw furthers my point in regards to the fear that enabled my grandmother from reaching out for help. She was consumed by the thought that she would not receive serious and effective help, and rather believed that help would only create further damage. A symbol that relates to the hardships experienced by my grandmother include a broken heart on the back of a small red Solo cup. A symbol that relates to the front of the Solo cup is meant to represent everything that looks fine on the outside, and the broken heart on the back is meant to represent the broken heart. In ways I am aware of, privileges I have easily been granted that have served me with comfort throughout different scenarios every day. Considering that I am from a middle-class family, I have grown accustomed to certain accommodations that have intensified my motivation to pursue a higher education and maintain a positive mindset while doing so. In the article White Middle-Class Privilege, Social Class Bias and Implications for Training and Practice, published in the Journal of Multicultural Counseling and Development, William Ming argues that privilege encourages people to strive for a better lifestyle in hopes of success. Meanwhile, being a minority influences one mindset negatively, which results in habits that reflects failure and determinant. Ming states, privileged individuals expect to be treated fairly in banks, stores, and work situations. These expectations speak to their liabilities to get what they want and when they want it. Therefore, because of their privileges, expectations consistently translate into positive outcomes. Consistent positive outcomes lead to greater belief in future success. Conversely, individuals from a lower social class may approach the same situations expecting failure. Specifically, experiences have taught people who are poor or less privileged that they are less likely to receive bank loans, that they are more likely to encounter discrimination in stores, and that they have little influence in their work situations. The lack of privilege might in turn lead to a lower sense of self-efficacy. Ming describes how the different lifestyles associated with poverty influence the responsibilities individuals hold themselves accountable to, which in turn leads to feeling powerless. When considering privilege associated with being middle class, an object that illustrates this would be this toy car. I was given a car by my parents, which I am generally appreciative for. However, when analyzing the intersectionality between myself and marginalized/minority groups, I am lucky to have been given the privilege of driving a car at such a young age. My adult individuals that reside in poverty never make/or receive enough money to financially support themselves and therefore own a car. Thus, this object signifies that intersectionality presents between wealth gaps. Furthermore, a second generation college student, I continuously experience an influence brought upon my parents of the importance of receiving a higher form of education. After seeing this accomplishment and success of my parents, it was obvious that furthering my education was crucial in order to succeed in the real world. The reason I chose my father's diploma is because, being a second generation college student, I experienced the pressure of having to attend a university with an extremely competitive environment, just as he did. Ultimately, being aware of the education required to become successful today, along with the influence of my parents in regards to how much they valued their higher form of education, makes me value the importance of continuing to achieve academic success. In the article First and Second Generation College Students, a comparison of their engagement and intellectual development, published in the Ohio State University Press, Gary R. Pike states that immense differences between first generation and second generation college students. Pike explains, in large part, first-generation college students' lower persistence and graduate rates, their lower scores on standardized assessments measures are the result of differences in the pre-college characteristics of first- and second-generation students. For example, first-generation students tend to come from families with lower incomes, have lower levels of engagement in high school. Both of these characteristics are related to success in college. Pike is arguing that the first-generation college students have a disadvantage because they grow up with an intense amount of pressure to become as successful or even more successful than their parents, which to some may seem impossible. Additionally, he points out that coming from lower-income families can affect young adults engage in high school classes and how this leads to a similar level of perseverance in college. Here, I have my father's diploma, which signifies that I accomplished or signifies the accomplishments and successes my father was able to achieve and in turn support my family. Another intersectionality of mine is that my parents are not divorced. I am fortunate to have been able to go throughout life without bearing the troubles of a divorced family. I chose a clay family of 4 penguins because when a female and a male penguin find each other, it's a bond for them forever. Although my parents have disagreements, this is typically when parenting and raising a family. However, my family has stayed strong to ensure that I am healthy both mentally and physically, which has allowed me to realize that they will continue to support me throughout my life. In the article titled "Do Children Carry the Weight of a Divorce?", Alice explains the impact a split household can have on the development and growth of the children who are affected in the crossfire. Parental separation may negatively affect children's physical health by changing the quality and quantity of resources available in the family or by imposing stress and altering children's environment. In turn, poor health in childhood might have long-lasting effects on various health and social outcomes in adulthood. When Goisis was saying that it was being a child with divorced parents forces the child to endure the constant issues of changing environment, which can cause an immense amount of stress. The quote also mentioned that the child might develop different social aspects, which is interesting to me because I was never forced through this and very curious as to how it would have affected me. Lastly, world poverty is a tragedy faced by much of the population worldwide, affecting every individual in different ways. As stated earlier, I was fortunate enough to grow up with in an affluent neighborhood around people I love and trust. However, some are less fortunate and are forced to live under conditions that are much more dangerous. In the article, New Study underscores differences between growing up poor and middle class in Baltimore, published by Baltimore Justice Report. Milo Caliban states that People growing up in Baltimore face tragedies every day that influence their every decision, in turn causing them to take on the responsibilities of an adult at such young ages. Caliban states, young people growing up poor in Baltimore face an array of difficult circumstances, from living in overcrowded houses to taking the responsibilities of childcare and wage earning when parents aren't able or aren't around. They suffer physical, verbal, emotional, and sexual abuse. They are surrounded by crime and blight. They've seen relatives die and overdose. They've seen friends murdered, all of which result in trauma, and all of which alludes to drag even the most gifted and ambitious students away from their goals. Teens from poor urban neighborhoods want the same thing from their wealthier suburbs want: good jobs, a nice place to live, raise a family, but poverty and all the other circumstances that surround it claw at them. And one young woman put it like crabs in a bucket. Many of today's young adults are forced to support themselves at a young age, which makes it difficult to discover your identity, hobbies, interests, and more. Although I am still dependent on my parents, I have a job and receive a weekly paycheck that allows me to support miscellaneous spending. Here I have a statement of the amount I earned at Jamba Juice. Even though I am not forced to spend this money on paying for necessities, having a job made me aware of the importance of budgeting money for the future and understanding more in depth the value it holds. Thus, understanding the intersectionality between the value of money holds within different groups makes me thankful that I can have a job that allows me to explore my interests and not have to stress whether I made enough to pay the bills for college tuition. Intersectionality is a move toward creating a leveled playing field through discussing differences. Therefore, people are able to bond over shared experiences, which allows them to find a common ground. After relieving the many opportunities I have gratefully been given simply because of my socioeconomic standing, race, and gender, I have come to better understand the complexities of oppression experienced by minority and/or marginalized groups. Thus, by learning about intersectionality, I have been capable of establishing a deeper understanding of the overlapping identities that exist between myself and others, which has made me appreciate to a greater extent all the opportunities I have been fortunate enough to have. Ultimately, intersectionality is in a sense a lens through which one is able to identify overlaps between the complexities of human experience.